In an act of sovereign defiance that has stunned Washington, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has just formally and publicly rejected a direct offer from the Trump administration. The offer was presented as a deal to lift visa restrictions, but what happened in response is something you truly won't believe. Here was the offer. It arrived not with fanfare but with the quiet gravity that often accompanies moments of profound consequence. In a private room, away from the glare of cameras and the hum of the press, a senior U.S. official slid a folder across the polished surface of a mahogany table. The folder, thick with documents and stamped with the insignia of the State Department, contained a proposal that would test the resolve and sovereignty of Trinidad and Tobago. The air was heavy with anticipation, the kind that signals a turning point in history. For the Trinidadian delegation, the stakes could not have been higher. The world outside was watching, even if they didn't know it yet. The Trump administration, in a move that would reverberate across the Caribbean and beyond, proposed a deal. The terms were clear, but the implications were anything but simple. The United States would lift the recently imposed visa bans and economic sanctions on Trinidadian citizens, measures that had already begun to disrupt families, businesses, and the flow of everyday life. In exchange, Trinidad and Tobago would be required to meet 3 specific conditions. Each condition on its own would have been a significant concession. Together they represented a fundamental shift in the nation's foreign policy, economic orientation, and even its public identity. The offer was not just about visas or sanctions. It was about the future direction of an entire country and the balance of power in the region. The first condition was perhaps the most audacious. Trinidad and Tobago would have to grant the United States exclusive rights to build, operate, and control a new military-grade deep-water port on the island of Chaguaramas. This was not just any port. Chaguaramas, with its deep natural harbor and proximity to key shipping lanes, had long been recognized as a strategic gem in the Caribbean. During World War II, it had served as a vital base for Allied naval operations. Now, decades later, the U.S. sought to re-establish a foothold there, this time with even greater control. The proposed port would be equipped to handle the largest military vessels, advanced surveillance systems, and a permanent American security presence. For Trinidad, this would mean ceding a measure of sovereignty over a critical piece of its territory. For the United States, it was an opportunity to project power, monitor regional activity, and secure vital maritime routes in an era of growing geopolitical competition. The second condition struck at the heart of Trinidad and Tobago's economic independence. The government would be required to withdraw from its recently signed Energy and Security Pact with non-Western partners, a deal that had opened new markets and diversified the nation's alliances. In its place, Trinidad would have to reinstate exclusive contracts with United States oil companies, effectively reversing years of diplomatic outreach and economic diversification. This was about more than just oil. It was about who controlled the flow of resources, who set the terms of trade, and who benefited from the island's natural wealth. For American companies, it was a chance to regain dominance in a lucrative market. For Trinidad, it meant turning away from emerging partners in Asia and the Middle East, and recommitting to a relationship that had often been marked by asymmetry and dependence. The energy sector, the lifeblood of Trinidad's economy, would once again be tied to the interests and priorities of Washington. The third and final condition was as much about symbolism as substance. Trinidad and Tobago would be expected to publicly endorse President Trump's immigration and foreign policy platform in the lead-up to the United States election. This was a demand for visible, vocal support, a gesture designed to send a message not just to American voters, but to the world. For the Trinidadian government, it posed a profound dilemma. To comply would be to align the nation's public image with a controversial and polarizing administration, risking backlash at home and abroad. To refuse would mean continued isolation, economic hardship, and the possibility of further escalation. The pressure was immense. The eyes of the international community were fixed on Port of Spain, waiting to see whether Trinidad would bend or stand firm. Behind closed doors, the debate raged. Some argued that the offer, while distasteful, was a necessary compromise in the face of mounting economic pressure. Others saw it as an existential threat, a surrender of sovereignty and a betrayal of the nation's hard-won independence. The cabinet weighed the risks and rewards, consulting with advisors, allies, and the business community. Outside, the public was restless. News of the offer had leaked, sparking protests, heated debates, and a surge of nationalistic sentiment. Social media lit up with hashtags demanding transparency and accountability. The opposition seized the moment, accusing the government of selling out the country's future. International observers issued cautious statements, warning of the precedent such a deal could set for small states everywhere. In the end, the offer was more than a set of demands. It was a test of Trinidad and Tobago's identity, its values, and its place in the world. Would the nation choose short-term relief at the cost of long-term autonomy, or would it chart its own course, even in the face of adversity? The answer, whatever it would be, would shape the destiny of Trinidad and Tobago for generations to come. The world waited, holding its breath, as the island stood on the edge of a decision that would echo far beyond its shores. Trinidad didn't just say no, they did the unthinkable. The Prime Minister held a live, nationally televised address where she read the terms of the United States offer verbatim to the public, exposing the blunt quid pro quo to the world. She then stated, "Terms now. We are not a colony for lease. Our sovereignty is not a commodity to be traded for travel visas." But you won't believe what happened next. The world was watching, and the shockwaves from Trinidad and Tobago's bold decision rippled across continents. In newsrooms from Port of Spain to London, anchors paused mid-sentence, their faces registering disbelief as the story broke. Social media feeds exploded with speculation, hashtags trending worldwide within minutes. People everywhere were glued to their screens, waiting to see what the global response would be. The air was thick with anticipation, and for a moment, it seemed as if the entire world was holding its breath. Within 1 hour of the rejection, the governments of Canada, the United Kingdom, and the European Union convened emergency meetings. Behind closed doors, diplomats and advisors scrambled to assess the implications of Trinidad and Tobago's unprecedented move. The stakes were high, and the world's most powerful nations knew they had to act quickly. In Ottawa, London, and Brussels, officials drafted statements, coordinated phone calls, and prepared for press conferences. The message was clear: this was not just a local issue, but a matter of international significance. The eyes of the world were on Trinidad and Tobago, and the next steps would set the tone for global diplomacy in the days to come. And then, almost simultaneously, the announcements came. In a rare display of unity, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the European Union each issued official statements from their respective capitals. The language was carefully chosen, but the intent was unmistakable. They praised Trinidad and Tobago for its courage and integrity, highlighting the nation's commitment to its values and sovereignty. At press conferences, diplomats fielded questions from reporters, emphasizing the importance of standing up for principles in a rapidly changing world. Embassies around the globe received new instructions, and staff worked late into the night to implement the new policies. The world watched as these powerful nations extended a hand of friendship and support to Trinidad and Tobago, signaling a shift in international alliances and priorities. The impact was immediate and profound. For Trinidadian citizens, the news was nothing short of life-changing. Suddenly, doors that had once seemed closed were flung wide open. Airports buzzed with excitement as families and young professionals prepared for new opportunities abroad. Immigration officers, now equipped with updated guidelines, processed applications at record speed. Social media was flooded with stories of hope and gratitude as people shared their dreams of studying, working, and building new lives in Canada, the UK, and across Europe. The sense of pride was palpable, not just for the opportunities themselves, but for the recognition of Trinidad and Tobago's values on the world stage. It was a moment of celebration, unity, and renewed optimism for the future. But the story didn't end there. The international community took notice, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. In Port of Spain, crowds gathered in the streets, waving flags and marching in solidarity. The government received messages of support from leaders around the world, each one acknowledging Trinidad and Tobago's principled stance on sovereignty. Diplomatic handshakes were exchanged, and new partnerships began to take shape. Official documents highlighted the importance of self-determination and respect for national identity, setting a powerful precedent for other nations facing similar challenges. The world had witnessed a small nation stand tall, and in doing so, Trinidad and Tobago inspired a global conversation about the true meaning of sovereignty, dignity, and international cooperation. As the dust settled, one thing was clear: the aftermath of this historic moment would be felt for years to come, both at home and around the world. The rejection didn't isolate Trinidad and Tobago, far from it. In fact, what happened next was nothing short of extraordinary. As news of Trinidad's bold decision spread across the globe, the world watched with a mix of surprise, admiration, and, in some quarters, concern. For decades, small nations like Trinidad and Tobago have often been seen as peripheral players on the world stage, their voices drowned out by the thunderous pronouncements of larger, more powerful countries. But this time, things were different. Trinidad's refusal to bow to pressure sent a clear message. Even the smallest nations can stand tall and assert their sovereignty, even when faced with the might of global superpowers. Almost immediately, the international community responded. Major powers, each with their own interests and agendas, began to reach out to Trinidad and Tobago. Some offered economic aid, others proposed new trade agreements, and a few even extended invitations to high-level diplomatic summits. It was as if the world had suddenly realized the strategic importance of this Caribbean nation, nestled at the crossroads of North and South America, and at the gateway to the Atlantic. The competing shows of support were not just about helping Trinidad, they were about staking a claim in the shifting sands of global influence. The United States, the European Union, China, and even Russia all saw an opportunity to strengthen their ties with Trinidad, hoping to gain a foothold in a region that has become increasingly important in the 21st century. Suddenly, Trinidad and Tobago found itself thrust into the spotlight, not just as a symbol of resistance, but as a key player in a much larger geopolitical contest. The world's media descended on Port of Spain, eager to capture the story of a small nation standing up to a global giant. Headlines proclaimed Trinidad's defiance, and social media buzzed with messages of support from people around the world. But beneath the surface, there was a more complex reality at play. Trinidad was not just a symbol, it was also a pawn, caught in the crossfire of a global competition for influence. Every offer of support came with strings attached, and every diplomatic overture was part of a larger strategy. The government of Trinidad and Tobago had to navigate these waters carefully, balancing the need for international partnerships with the imperative to protect its own sovereignty and interests. For the Trump administration, the rejection was a stunning setback. The attempt to strong-arm Trinidad and Tobago into compliance had backfired spectacularly, not only failing to achieve its immediate goals but also undermining America's image as an unchallenged global leader. Instead of isolating Trinidad, the move had galvanized other nations to rally around it, exposing the limits of unilateral pressure in a world that is increasingly multipolar. The episode became a case study in the risks of coercive diplomacy, and a reminder that even the most powerful countries cannot always dictate terms to smaller states. In the halls of power in Washington, policymakers were forced to reckon with a new reality. The old playbook no longer worked, and new strategies would be needed to maintain influence in a rapidly changing world. For small nations everywhere, Trinidad and Tobago's experience was a powerful lesson. In a world where power is no longer concentrated in a single superpower, countries that were once considered marginal now have options. They can forge new alliances, diversify their partnerships, and leverage their strategic positions to advance their own interests. The Caribbean, long seen as a backyard for larger powers, is now emerging as a region of growing importance, with its nations playing an increasingly active role in shaping the global agenda. Trinidad's story is a testament to the resilience and agency of small states, and a reminder that the world is changing in ways that few could have predicted just a decade ago. To truly understand the full scope of the geopolitical realignment that has been triggered by Trinidad's rejection, it's important to look beyond the headlines. This is not just a story about one country standing up to another. It's about the shifting balance of power in the 21st century, the rise of new actors on the world stage, and the complex web of relationships that now define international politics. The world is no longer divided into simple blocks or alliances. Instead, we are witnessing the emergence of a multipolar order where influence is contested, alliances are fluid, and even the smallest nations can play a decisive role. The events in Trinidad and Tobago are just one example of a much larger trend, one that will shape the future of global politics for years to come. In times like these, having access to the most current, in-depth analysis is more important than ever. The world is changing at a breathtaking pace, and the old certainties no longer apply. New alliances are being formed, old rivalries are being rekindled, and the rules of the game are being rewritten in real time. If you want to stay informed about these developments, if you want to understand not just what is happening but why it matters, you need reliable, up-to-date information from sources you can trust. That's where we come in. Our team of experts is dedicated to bringing you the latest news, analysis, and insights on the stories that are shaping our world. From the corridors of power in Washington and Beijing to the streets of Port of Spain and beyond, we are committed to keeping you informed and empowered. So if you found this guide helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. By subscribing, you'll never miss our essential guides, deep dives, and timely updates on the most important issues facing our world today. Join our community of engaged viewers who are passionate about understanding the forces that shape our lives. Stay informed, stay curious, and stay ahead of the curve. Because in a world as dynamic and unpredictable as ours, knowledge is power. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to bringing you more essential stories and analysis in the days and weeks to come.